They say the greatest pain isn't death or separation. It's standing right in front of the person you love, knowing they have absolutely no memory of who you are. Diem brought Toan to the hospital, clinging to a fragile hope, only to be handed a brutal verdict. The psychological trauma was so severe, Toan has completely forgotten himself. The treatment costs are sky high, but in their pockets, there's nothing left but despair. But true love means walking through fire to save the other person. With hope fading, Diem chose a thorny path, accepting a heartbreak to claw back Toan's life. Will that sacrifice pay off? Hit subscribe so you don't miss these tear-jerking moments of love and resilience. The city felt strange today. It was quiet, creepy, quiet. The usual noise of traffic, street vendors, honking horns. It all seemed suffocated, swallowed whole by the storm raging inside Diem's head. She was walking, but it felt like drifting through an endless nightmare. Walking beside her was Toan. Toan, the man who used to be her whole world, who shielded her from every storm. But now, he walked hesitantly, like a child who lost his mother. His eyes drifted aimlessly, scanning strangers' faces, then scanning Diem's face. No recognition, no familiar warmth, just emptiness, a deep abyss separating them, even though they were walking side by side. Every now and then, Toan would freeze at a red light, his brows furrowing in confusion at the bustling crowd. He was scared. The fear of someone thrown into a game where they've forgotten the rules. Every time that happened, Diem's heart skipped a painful beat. Gently but firmly, she tightened her grip on his arm. Her fingers dug into his shirt knuckles, turning white. It wasn't just guidance, it was desperation. She was terrified that if she let go for even a second, he would dissolve into the crowd, or worse, drift away from reality forever. "Let's go, honey, we're almost there," Diem whispered, her voice lost in the wind. Was she talking to him, or trying to reassure herself? The hospital welcomed them with that hauntingly specific smell, cold, harsh antiseptic, assaulting the senses, waking up every primal fear of sickness and separation. Diem helped Toan sit on the waiting bench. Surrounded by stark white walls, a soulless, brutally cold white. Toan sat there strangely obedient. He stared into space at tiny cracks in the plaster, his eyes unfocused. He didn't know where he was, and painfully, he didn't know who the woman sitting next to him was, the woman holding her breath, watching his every move. In that wait, that felt like a century, Diem couldn't stop her mind from drifting to the past. Music shifts to a sad melodic tune. She remembered Toan's smile from the old days, a sunny smile that could wipe away all her fatigue. She remembered his warm, confident voice, talking about architectural plans about their future. "Diem, one day, I'll build you a house full of roses. You just water the flowers, leave the storms outside to me." That promise echoed in her ears like a cut. The man who promised to protect her was now sitting there, curled up, afraid of his own shadow. Those memories, as beautiful as they were now just as sharp. Fragile as glass, ready to shatter at the slightest touch of this harsh reality. Occasionally, Toan turned to look at her, a look full of curiosity and innocence. His lips moved, like he wanted to ask something, but language seemed to have abandoned him. He fell silent again, looking down at his hands. "I'm here. Don't be afraid. I've got you," Diem whispered, forcing a twisted smile. She was lying. She told him not to be afraid, but her own hands were trembling uncontrollably. She told herself this was temporary. The doctor would give him meds, he'd sleep, and wake up as the old Toan. But deep down, her intuition was screaming a fear she dared not name, that her Toan was dead, and the person sitting here was just a hollow shell. Family of patient Dangvan Toan. The nurse's voice pulled Diem back to reality. She took a deep breath, feeling like she was walking to the executioner's block. The exam room was blindingly bright. Toan sat on the bed, still distant, letting the doctor shine a light in his eyes and tap his joints. Diem pressed herself into the corner, answering the doctor's questions with a shaking voice she tried to keep steady. She watched every frown, every nod of the old doctor, hunting for a ray of hope. She was praying for a simple sentence. It's okay, just a mild concussion, a few weeks of meds, and he'll be fine. But no. When the doctor sat down opposite them, took off his reading glasses, and placed them on the desk, the air in the room seemed to freeze. His face was calm but heavy, the look of a bearer of bad news. Diem unconsciously straightened her back, her hand finding Toan's and interlacing their fingers tight. She needed an anchor, even if that anchor was now frail. The doctor began to speak. Every word was slow and clear, like a hammer driving nails into Diem's heart. Ms. Diem Toan's condition is much more complex than we thought. He explained that the blow to the head was just the tip of the iceberg. It caused physical damage, yes, but the terrifying part was what lay beneath. He is trapped in a maze of his own making, he said. The doctor said, his voice dropping low. Aside from the traumatic brain injury, he is suffering from severe crippling PTSD. There is a memory, some intense pain from his past, or from the moment of the accident that has triggered his brain's defense mechanism. He hasn't just forgotten. He is refusing to remember. He is running away from reality, running away from himself. Diem went numb. Toan wasn't just physically injured. His soul was shattered. The buried psychological trauma was now rising to the surface, gnawing at and destroying his mind from the inside out. She looked over at Toan. He was still sitting there staring blankly at the ceiling, completely unaware that they were discussing the tragedy of his life. So what do we do, doctor? How long until he remembers? Diem asked, her voice cracking. The doctor shook his head slightly. Recovery won't be measured in days or weeks. It is a long war. We need a combination of specialized medication, neurostimulation therapies, and most importantly, intensive psychotherapy. Progress will be very slow. Often, it's one step forward, two steps back. There are no 100% guarantees. And then he mentioned the thing Diem feared most, the naked reality that could strangle any romantic hope, the cost. To pursue this treatment plan, the family needs to be prepared mentally and financially. The number will be substantial, very substantial. When she heard the estimated figure, Diem's vision went dark. Her ears rang. The numbers danced before her eyes like monsters mocking their poverty. She nodded mechanically, pretending to understand, pretending to be calm. But inside, her mind was collapsing. Where would the money come from? They had no savings. A cramped rental frugal meals just to get by. How could she possibly scrape together that massive sum, no insurance, no wealthy relatives to lean on? Just two lonely souls standing on the edge of a cliff. Diem looked down at her rough hands, then at Toan's vacant face. She wanted to scream, wanted to ask the doctor if there was a cheaper way, a shortcut for the poor. but the doctor's steady, pitying gaze answered everything. This was the only way to save Toan. If they didn't treat him now, he would live forever in the shadow of oblivion, becoming a child in a man's body, slowly withering away until he died. In that moment of utter despair, backed into a corner, a thought flashed through Diem's mind. A crazy decision. A decision she knew would shred her self-respect and could destroy her entire life afterward. But looking at Toan, looking at the man she loved more than life itself, she knew she had no choice. Diem raised her head, her eyes no longer holding fear, but replaced by a cold, heartbreaking determination. She squeezed Toan's hand one last time. "Doctor, go ahead with the treatment plan. I will take care of the money." What will she do to get that money? What will she trade? Her body, her soul, or some dark secret? The answer lies ahead in a journey filled with tears and blood. The bus ride back to their dilapidated rental seemed longer than usual. Toan rested his head on Diem's shoulder, asleep from exhaustion after the battery of tests. His breath blew steadily against her neck, hot and heavy, but his hand in sleep still unconsciously gripped the hem of her shirt like a child afraid of being abandoned in a market. Diem sat motionless, staring blankly out the dust-streaked window. The city lights were coming on. The brilliant neon lights from the skyscrapers flashed past her eyes like streaks of mockery. Out there, people were living laughing, spending money on lavish dinners. While in here, in the dark corner of this bus, she was calculating if selling their old motorbike, their only asset of value, would even cover the first week of his medication. Back home, the silence of the rental room crashed down, enveloping the two small figures. The room was barely 20 square meters, the plaster peeling off the walls in large chunks, revealing cracked bricks like scars of time. The distinct, musty smell of poor labor housing rose up, mixing with the antiseptic scent, lingering on Toan's hair to create the bitter taste of reality. Diem helped Toan lie down on the thin mattress, spread on the floor. He lay still obediently, his wide eyes watching the water stains on the ceiling. "Are you hungry?" Diem asked, her voice hoarse. Toan shook his head slightly, his eyes never leaving a gecko crawling across the ceiling. "Diem!" He uttered her name, popping out of his mouth with difficulty, strange and foreign, as if he were tasting a word he just learned. "I'm here." Diem quickly grabbed his hand. "My head. There's noise, like sirens, screaming." Toan's voice trembled, his pupils starting to constrict. Diem held her breath. The doctor had warned about this. The traumatic memories were surfacing. "It's okay, Toan, just traffic outside. You're home. You're safe." She stroked his forehead, trying to transfer her warmth to him. But Toan suddenly curled up, clutching his head with both hands, muttering nonsense words, his breathing becoming rapid and panicked. The pain, or rather the invisible haunting, was attacking him, witnessing the love of her life, writhing in a waking nightmare. Diem felt her heart being crushed. She knew she had no time to hesitate anymore. Every second that passed without treatment, Toan would sink deeper into the swamp of insanity. Diem waited until Toan was exhausted and drifted into a fitful sleep before she tiptoed out to the narrow balcony. The cold night wind slapped her face, drying the tears before they could fall. She pulled out her phone, the screen lighting up, to reveal her gaunt face in the darkness. Darkness. Her finger hovered over her contacts list, stopping at a name she had sworn never to contact again. Tu wasn't a friend. He wasn't family. Tu was a past diem wanted to bury. He was a successful businessman, cold ruthless, and the man who once tried to buy her love with money but failed. The day Diem chose Toan, a poor but sincere boy, Tu looked at her with eyes sharp as ice and said, "You'll see. You can't eat love. When you've tasted enough of life's bitterness, come back and find me." That curse from years ago had now come true in the most bitter way possible. Diem stared at the phone number, her trembling finger hovering over the call button. Calling Tu meant admitting defeat. Calling Tu meant trampling on her own dignity to beg the man who had despised her choice. But Toan's groans of pain echoing from the room felt like a knife in her back, reminding her of the price of hesitation. Toan's life or your pride, choose Diem. The voice in her head screamed. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, swallowed all the bitterness, and pressed call. The ringtone dragged on cold and distant. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. "Hello." A deep, authoritative voice rang out on the other end. No surprise, as if he had been waiting for this call for a long time. "It's me, Diem," her voice cracked. Silence on the other end for a second, then a soft chuckle, a laugh that sent waves of goosebumps down her skin. "I knew you'd call. A little sooner than I expected. How much do you need?" He didn't ask how she was, didn't ask why. He cut straight to the chase like he was closing a business deal. He knew her situation perfectly. Maybe he had been watching, or maybe he just understood the cruel rules of life better than anyone. "I need a lot to save a life." "Fine. Come see me. Right now. At my villa on the outskirts. Right now, but it's late. You aren't in a position to set terms, Diem. The money or hang up." Click, click, click. The cold disconnect left Diem stranded in the dark. She stared at the black screen, then turned to look at Toan sleeping exhaustedly. She walked into the room, knelt beside him, and kissed his forehead one last time. "Wait for me. I'll bring life back to you." Diem threw on a thin jacket, asked the landlady to watch Toan for a bit, and rushed out into the street. The darkness swallowed her small figure. She was walking into the tiger's den, without weapons, without armor, armed only with a desperate love. Tu's villa stood isolated on a hill, massive and magnificent, like a castle, but cold as a crypt. The heavy iron gates slowly opened, and Diem walked in her footsteps, echoing on the polished granite floor. Tu sat there on a deep crimson velvet armchair, swirling a glass of blood-colored wine. He was as dashing and elegant as ever, but his eyes were sharp as razors. "Sit." He jerked his chin toward the chair opposite him. On the table, a black briefcase sat waiting. The lid was thrown open, revealing thick stacks of cash inside. Enough money for Toan's surgery therapy and to live comfortably for a year. Money that Diem couldn't dream of earning in a lifetime of hard work. "This money is enough to solve all your problems," Tu said, taking a sip of wine, his hungry gaze locked on Diem's gaunt but still beautiful face. "I'm not a charity, Diem, you know that. What do you want?" Diem asked, her hands clutching the hem of her dress to stop the trembling. "I'll sign a debt note. I'll work to pay it off gradually. I'll pay for the rest of my life." "I don't lack money." Tu cut her off, his voice icy. He stood up slowly, walking toward her, his shadow casting long over her body. What I want you wouldn't give me back then. Now, do you really think you have the right to keep it? Diem froze. She knew exactly what he was implying. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating her until she could barely breathe. Tu leaned down, bringing his lips close to her ear, whispering words that dripped like poison. I'll give you the money. You don't have to pay it back. But in exchange, you have to leave Toan to his own world. You have to disappear from his life. Immediately. Forever. Diem looked up at him, stunned. What are you saying? That is the price. Tu smirked the smile of a ruthless victor. He'll have the money to live, to get treated, to go back to being a normal person. But he is never allowed to remember who you are. And you are never allowed to appear in front of him again. You will be his savior. But you will also be the one he forgets forever. Why? Why would you do this? Diem's tears spilled over. Because I want to prove it to you. Tu turned his back, his voice steely. That this great love you worship when faced with life and death is just another commodity to be traded. Well, Diem, choose. Cling to your love and watch him slowly rot away in poverty. Or let go so the man you love can live a full life. But without you, the briefcase of cash sat there gaping open like a demon's mouth laughing at her. Images of Toan in agony, writhing in psychosis, flashed through Diem's mind. And then, an image of him, healthy, smiling brightly under the sun. A smile not meant for her appeared as well. Diem stood up, her legs wobbling. Her heart felt like it was being ripped in two. A brutal decision. A sacrifice no one could understand. If she agreed, she would save him, but she would kill her own soul. She looked straight into Tu's eyes, and in that moment, the eyes of that weak woman suddenly blazed with a terrifying resilience. She slowly reached her hand toward the briefcase. Will Diem take the money? Will she accept selling off the memories of their love to buy Toan's life? Or will she turn her back and walk away to find another hopeless path? And Toan, in his fitful dreams, can he feel that the girl is trading her entire life for him? The answer remains in the shadows. A journey full of tears, betrayal, and noble sacrifice has only just begun. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to step into the next chapter of this haunting tragedy. Don't miss it, because Diem's decision will change everything.